and then I throw them out and I let them go do it. Right. And everybody, it's hard, right? As a head coach, you want to micromanage and you want to have this meeting and you want to control. Well, I think you can, and I think you can manage it by you give them the expectations, you show them how you want certain things done, and then you turn them loose and let them go do it. Knowing they're going to fail. They're going to mess stuff up. Those guys, right? You hope that they don't mess stuff up so bad it costs you a game or burns the buildings to the ground, right?
Right.
But there's no way a young coach in our world can go out there and learn how to do stuff if you don't let them go out and do it. They got to fail, right? They got to go out and they got to lose a recruit because maybe they just didn't make enough phone calls or, you know.
What's up, everybody? We're off the field. We got a special one for you guys today. We got special guest Coach Nesbitt, head coach at Ottawa University. He's been coaching for 20 years of collegiate coaching. Reign Coach of the Year in the AIA West, also the SAC Coach of the Year, all back in 2019. He coaches succeeded at every level. Some may know him as one of the top offensive play callers in college football. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Isaiah.
Oh, thanks for coming on, Coach. I really appreciate it. So for the people that don't know you, Coach, can you tell them a little bit about your story? Like, how did you become from being a punter to now being one of the best offensive coaches in the game?
Oh, well, everybody always laughs, how I went from being a specialist and a punter and then being a coaching quarterbacks and that. My old teammates at the University of New Mexico would say that a lot of times it was because I just stood back there and did nothing during practice and I watched enough to practice. That part of that might be true. I spent a lot of time, when I was a player. I knew from an early age that I was going to coach and teach. I had some great high school coaches and some great college coaches that always let me around the building and I knew from an early time, probably when I was 9, 10 years old, that I was going to be a college football coach if I didn't get a play. And I spent a lot of time around it. And then I was around some really good offensive coaches. I was around some guys a couple of the guys that are kind of in your neighborhood over there at the University of Maryland. A guy by the name of Matt Simon was our running back coach at the time at the University of New Mexico, and Dennis Franchione and Dan Dodd and that. And then even when I first started at the University of New Mexico, I was with a guy by the name of Mike Shepard, and his son is actually the offensive coordinator over there at Towson State right now. And,
oh, wow, okay.
And we were run and shoot at the time, and we did some things like that. And then, as I was lucky enough to go through my career as a player, I ended up going to the New Orleans Saints. And at the time, Jim Mora was the head coach. And we had some really good offensive coaches at the time at New Orleans and some really good players. And then my next team and my last team in the NFL, I was at at Minnesota, and Denny Green was the head coach at the time. I mean, we had Monty Kiffin was our D coordinator and Chip Smith, but Brian Billick was the offensive coordinator there. And so when you're a punter, you do have a lot of time where you're not in meetings and you can go sitting in the back of the room and you can watch guys coach and watch guys teach quarterbacks and running backs and just kind of be the fly on the wall if you're around the right guys, that are really open and free with their time. And so that was really my niche. And then, way back when I first started, I was a graduate assistant at the University of New Mexico, and I worked with the special teams and then on the offensive side. And then I got my first job. This is 1998. So this is way, way back when. Right? And at that point in time, if you were throwing the ball, you were a run and shoot, right? Everybody was just running the run and shoot. But growing up in Albuquerque and being around that offense, I'd always watched BYU play. And so I'd watch Steve Young, Jim McMahon, and all those guys. And some of the great quarterbacks that BYU had and Coach Lavelle Edwards and those guys. And then I was lucky enough to meet a guy by the name of Hal Mumme and Mike Leach when I first got my first coaching job, 1998. and I was coaching high school basketball at the time, and we were running the wing tee and a lot of power football, and a lot of the guys I had on the basketball team at that point in time weren't going out there to play. They weren't stock blocking and all that. And so I was very fortunate, and I got hooked up with Hal Mummy and those guys way, way back when at a coaches convention in Dallas when I was 27, 28 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was a long time ago, right? And I got in on it, and I just fell in love with it and being around those guys. So, for all of us, guys that get into coaching, you never know that when you let a guy that's a player of yours in the room or spend some time with a guy that might want to get into coaching, and you can just kind of like guide them a little bit and show them what it's like to be a position coach or coach wide receivers or DBs, or just let them sit in a meeting, right? And kind of let them get their feet wet where that trajectory and where that might take a guy. And so, I owe a lot to a lot of guys behind me for sure that were just, hey, coach, can I sit in the Skelly meeting tonight at New Orleans? And them not be like, what's this guy? Is he spying on us? Is he shoot, I just want to know what it was about, and how to coach and how to run a drill or a position meeting. And I would encourage all young guys to do that. When I was a player at the University of New Mexico, we'd always have a spring clinic. And I would beg to go to the spring clinic, even though I was a player. Hey, can I just go to the spring clinic? I mean, we were bringing guys in from all over the country to talk, from California to Texas to wherever, high school and college coaches. And I just wanted to sit in the room, and I didn't know anything. I probably still don't know, right? But I didn't know. I didn't know who a safety was. I didn't know who a curl flat defender. I was a dang punter. I didn't know anything. Right? Just being able to be in there and just kind of start the beginning phases of what it has to be a coach. That was a great start for me.
So you don't only coach, you actually go into programs and you change. You have an amazing college record. So how do you go about that? Because you start from programs like when you went to Ottawa. Did Ottawa even have a football team before you got there? And now
no, so Ottawa University, our main campus is there in Kansas, and right now you're really talking. This is the beginning of our 8th year out here in Arizona. So Ottawa University of Arizona, 8 years ago, we had one hallway, we had no students on campus, we had no cafeteria, no dorms, no athletic program. And so when I came out and interviewed for the job, they wanted to start a brand new football program out here. I had recruited Arizona for about 10, 15 years, somewhere in there, 12, where I'd come out and done the junior colleges. And I already knew that there was a lot of talent within the state of Arizona, in the city of Phoenix, right, of young guys that needed a place to play that couldn't play at U of A, couldn't play at Arizona State, or couldn't go to NAU. Those kids all had to leave. And so that was really the beginning of what we started here was, we started 28 intercollegiate sports, everything all across the board, and all of us coaches had to hire a staff and that. And really the first thing I did when we started out here was I tried to connect with the high school coaches as fast as possible. I would really wear these guys out. I'd call them all the time, try to get in their buildings, go watch practice, and just kind of, when you go to a new school, I don't know if it's just like starting it from scratch, right? Like we started, or even yourself, right? If you take a new job and you get a recruiting area, I'm really old school. I think you got to get out. You got to get off the phone. You got to get off email and Twitter and all that other stuff and Instagram. And you got to walk in that school with your notepad and a pen and a paper, and they got to look you in the eye and you got to look them in the eye and shake some hands and tell them that you're there. You care about their team. You care about their kids, that you're going to get a coach, and it's got to have a personal interaction. And before any head coach, I think if he's worth his salt in high school, is going to say, oh yeah, you know what? You should go look at that school. You need to go take a visit.
Right.
And that was really how we started it. That first year, the first 100 days, I contacted every school in the state of Arizona, and I called every head coach and introduced myself and said, hey, I'm Mike Nesbitt, and we're starting a football program here, and we're going to need your help. I need your help, because nobody even knew who we were at that point in time. They thought we were a continuing ed program or whatever. And so that was the niche. And then, I really went out and I tried to find some really hungry and young coaches that were excited about wanting to recruit. And, I'm a huge believer in it, especially at this level. It doesn't matter if you're Power 5, Group of 5, NAIA, Division 2, Division 3. It comes into the relationships of being able to get out and recruit. And you got to be I think you got to be really genuine. I think you got to be honest about what your university is, what you can offer, what you can't offer. Word of mouth is the best seller, and it's also the one that can kill you in this business about what your program's about and who you are as people. And I was really fortunate. I was able, the first 100 days, I was able to hire a really good group of coaches that were wanting to do the same thing, wanting to be sincere about what we were recruiting, and we had a good, steady mission about it. And I think that's one thing that was really exciting about this. I mean, and people don't understand when I said we didn't even have a helmet. We had no cleats, no shoes. We didn't have a facility. And so if you go online and you look at Ottawa University of Arizona now, everybody sees the 2 new dorms and the student union and the weight room and the field. And I keep telling them, we recruited the first original group to desert. There was nothing here. There was a parking lot.
Right.
So we had to get kids here to come play. And so, that was and I think a little bit of it is just being able to have a group of 12 to 14 coaches, right? You gotta come back to the same vision of, and I think this is the part that I think everybody can always look at is every job has problems. Every job has positives. Every job has negatives. Everybody has, the extra, whatever it is. But ultimately, I really believe we got started in the right way because the players were picking the school because of the people involved in it, the people, the coaches, the personal connection. They weren't picking it because we had 35 jersey combinations or we had a stadium or what, because we didn't have anything.
Right.
And I honestly think that's why our success was good early, was because we weren't playing for materialistic things. We weren't playing for stuff that's kind of fading, right? That depletes or whatever you want to call it, right? It wasn't. It was the human connection between a group of people that were like, I want to build something. I want to build it. And I want to be able, when we were talking to the originals, and we always call those guys the originals, our original recruits, was you're going to be the first team picture, right? Every place you go, right? Every place you've ever been at as a person, a player, or a coach, everybody walks in and is like, oh man, that's the first team picture in the 1870s, right? Or 1905 or whatever. And we were all like, wow, that's amazing. Well, we have a group of guys that we have their team picture up that was the original team picture. And I always point to that to the recruits when they come around of like, those guys there, they made a football program. They helped build a university, which I honestly believe that gave us some trajectory and some gas to get started in the right way.
So what you saying that, like, how do you even get people to buy into the vision? Because as players, sometimes we're taught to love the school and not the coaches, because sometimes coaches can move around. So how you as a coach just manage all that and just still get the vision across?
It was tough now. I mean, if it was not an easy deal. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the stuff we did originally was, we'd take guys on a tour and we'd stand them up and say that dirt parking lot's where the field's going to be. That's where the logo is going to be, and walk them around. This is where you're going to catch your first touchdown and stuff like that. But I honestly think in that was we never overhyped it of it's going to be that. And we're like, hey, we don't have that. This is where we're going to be. This is where we're going to be in 6 months. This is where we're going to be in 12 months. And then we had the right chancellor and the right president at that point in time too, that they held their end of the bargain. Our administration did a great job of standing tall and saying, all right, we need to have a football field in by October of that first recruiting class. We had a place to go work out, right? We had a place to train, a lift, run. We weren't searching around for fields or anything like that. It wasn't, it wasn't the best of the best, but when those guys showed up every morning, they had good equipment. They had a good place to practice. They had a great place to go lift weights, a great place to train. Well, not only did we recruit them, but we showed them that we were men of our word, right? That, hey, you're going to have a place to lift. You're going to have a place to practice. And then we didn't overhype it. And we said, hey, this is going to be a bad part, right? You're going to have to live off campus and commute from a hotel. That was our first storm. We had a hotel they had to live in, right? Well, we didn't lie to them in that. We were right. So then, and I think that's important for a lot of coaches to always understand, because everybody wants to sell and everybody wants to hype up where they're living and where they're coaching and all that. And you start maybe to get overextended, right, and oversell it. Well, the player's going to find out immediately once they get on campus that we oversold it, right? I mean, it's like if you go to a car to buy a car today and the guy selling you the car oversells it, and then you get in the car and 30 miles down the road, the car's not doing – you're going to know real quick, right, that you got what happens, right? Then there's that distrust between the player and the coach. Well, then all of a sudden it's like, is coach really telling me the truth on that? Or is he really well, they got to trust, right, that, hey, if you do this, it's going to make you a better student. It's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you a better player. To fully sell, right? To fully go out and do what you're going to do for the other person. And we didn't do it. Now, we took our lumps too, right, in doing that, because guys were competing and recruiting. And that's true. We don't have that. Well, if you're picking the school because of that, maybe you're not picking the right school either, And so I think that level of commitment and honesty up front really helped us at that starting point for sure, and got guys to play hard for us when we got to games, right? They could see value in why we were running and lifting and doing the stuff we did to get to it. Well, then the next group could believe in it, and then the group after that could believe in it, and then it just it flourished from there.
And I love your story just with college coaching, because it's similar to my story within high school. Like, I started off at Pilates High School. Nobody knew who that was. And then Chase Young and me and a couple of other guys ended up building that program up. Ended up leaving, went to another program nobody knew about. But me and Trayvon Diggs, we ended up playing really well and now got the name out of the school. In the last year of St. Francis in Maryland. So I ended up building that program up too. They only won 2 games before that season. And then got to Maine, ended up winning a ring there. So nobody knew who Maine was either. So I really am passionate about starting something new, because like you said, you set that groundwork and you set it up for the years to come. And maybe those people that you didn't get come to your school, it just wasn't the right fit, like you said, because I don't know what it is, but something about building it from the ground up makes you work harder and just makes you appreciate everything else after even more. So,
it does. I mean, it really does, because it's truly yours. Right? It's truly you've watched it, kind of like when you're a parent, right? You watch your child be born, you watch it crawl, you watch it walk, you watch it talk, you watch it develop, and you can do it. And I think a lot of times when you're starting a new program too, and I've told a lot of coaches this, and I think this is a valuable thing for a lot of guys, is when you start it and you don't like the way something's going, you're not afraid to go, don't do that anymore. Just stop doing that. It's not good for the players. It's not good for the coaches. It's not going to be good for our university. It's not going to build our team. Where when you're in an established place that's kind of maybe had a lot of success or whatever, everybody's like, well, that's the way we've always done it. That's the way we've always. Man, I have really worked hard in my mind and hopefully in our coaches to always kind of be like, there's no way we've always done it that way. We've been around for 7 years. We're just the starting 8. Hey, if it's not good, and we don't like what we did last fall, don't do it anymore. Kill it. Don't do it. Break it. Start it over and do what's good. And I think that helps guys because, and I think even I will take that with me for the rest of my coaching career is you don't have to do it the way you've always done it. If it's not benefiting your staff and it's not benefiting the guys in your locker room and it's not good for them, don't do it no more. Change it. Find what's good because every place is different. You can't do the same thing we do out here in Arizona. If you live in certain cities, certain states, right? You got to, it's different. The weather, right? Like us, we don't practice until 6:45 at night, 7 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Because it's too hot during the beginning of the season, right? Well, there's other places you don't need to practice that late, right? Well, we practice late, but we don't wake our kids up early in the morning and make them get up early at 5:30 in the morning during the fall. It doesn't work. And we did that when we first started. We made them get up and lift and do different things. And we said, no, you got to change that. It's not, the kids aren't getting enough sleep, right? The players, the coaches are too tired. Right? They're not able to make it through the days. So you got to be adaptable if you're going to be really good, I think, at this deal.
And with that being said, like you're building from the ground up and you like you said, you're the head coach. So how important is the role of leadership and mentoring in just college football?
You know, I think it's huge. I do. And I think it's hard because as the head coach, right, you're taken in a lot of different ways, right? You know, I mean, from equipment to video to travel to right. And especially in the small college level, right? Your support staff is not very big. We are the support staff a lot of times in the stuff we have to do. And so I try to go out and I try to get young guys that want to be a football ops or recruiting coordinator. And I bring them in and I show them like, okay, this is how we do it. This is how it's set up. Right? There's certain things that we have to do, right? That kind of my level of expectation of how I want certain things done. And then I throw them out and I let them go do it. Right. And everybody, it's hard, right? As a head coach, you want to micromanage and you want to have this meeting and you want to control. Well, I think you can, and I think you can manage it by you give them the expectations, you show them how you want certain things done, and then you turn them loose and let them go do it. Knowing they're going to fail. They're going to mess stuff up. Those guys, right? You hope that they don't mess stuff up so bad it costs you a game or burns the buildings to the ground, right? But there's no way a young coach in our world can go out there and learn how to do stuff if you don't let them go out and do it. They got to fail, right? They got to go out and they got to lose a recruit because maybe they just didn't make enough phone calls or, you know, the buses weren't ready when we got to the airport because I didn't call and check that back, right? And well, so I let them do it. And then I'm kind of like, all right, I've done it long enough where I'm like, hey, we're 2 weeks out. Have you called the bus company? Did you call the restaurant? Right? Did you check on what time our flight's going to be? Are we good? You know, is the weather good? Do we have to change the schedule? And they might not have thought of it because they've never done the job, right? It's kind of like the position meeting. Hey, where do you guys sit in the meetings? Did you go check the projector? You know, what time did you show up to your position meeting? Did you show up right on time or are you in your room 15, 20 minutes beforehand waiting for the players to come to you? Right. You know, and a lot of coaches will, you know, like the young guys will ask, and I'm like, well, if I'm in my room 20 minutes before and the players are coming in before the meeting starts, you can visit with those guys at that point in time. Right? I can ask how their day's doing. I can also check the temperature of the room as those guys are coming in. Well, a lot of guys are like, well, you know, if a guy's having a bad day, right? Maybe his girlfriend broke up with him. Maybe something's happening at home. It gives you kind of a feel of what that guy's trajectory might be for the rest of the afternoon, where you don't, if you're just there to coach at that moment in time, you might miss something that's going to affect the rest of the day. And I think that's where, as the head coach, if guys, and a lot of times, a guy told me a long time ago, a lot of times it's learning on what not to do, not what to do, right? Right. And I think that is crucial sometimes, is of learning what is really the best way to handle some stuff. And, and then I tell guys it's kind of like you go out to a pond, right? And you throw a pebble in the pond and you throw a rock out in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Once those ripples leave that rock, they touch every bank.
Mm.
And so a lot of times, a lot of decisions I make, I'm really slow on.
Mm.
I don't have to move fast. Everybody's like, oh, you got to make a decision right away. And I'm like, no, I really don't have to make a decision right away, because it's not a decision that's has to be done right away, right? So there's certain decisions of like, do you want pizza or do you want burgers after the game, right? Do you want to, okay, that's a simple decision, right?
Right.
But there's certain decisions you can kind of sit there and wait a little bit and be like, all right, if I make that decision, how is that going to affect the position group 2 doors down? How is that going to affect those 2 coaches? From recruiting areas, our recruiting areas. I try to set up our recruiting areas in our university here for our coaches, because Phoenix is a big city and I have certain coaches that live on certain sides of town. Well, if I can let a coach stay at home and recruit his neighborhood that he lives in, well, he's not having to commute across town to come over here on the other side of town to go recruit and then drive back at night. Well, that might get him home at night to eat dinner with his family. You might be able to stay at home and go watch his kids play basketball, take them to gymnastics practice. Well, that makes that guy a happier coach, right? I think that goes back to mentoring your guys and your coaches, of understanding, that you can help them and still be successful in what you're doing. Like pushing them out there, let them go do stuff, and then bring them back and go, all right, that's not how we wanted to hand out equipment, right? That wasn't very organized, right? Well, if a guy doesn't ever do it, he'll never be able to grow if you do it for him. And so I think for me personally, right, it took a lot off of my plate as a head coach when I was willing to say, okay, I'm going to delegate that. I mess it up, but then I can coach them, I can teach them, and then we can get it good, and then we can keep going and I can help them.
Love it, love it, love it. Next segment we have on here is called Remember the Time, Coach. You want to take it back. So first question I have for you of this segment is your favorite off the field experience you had with your players as a coach, whether it's traveling to an away game or a bowl game. What is that for you?
Favorite off the field experience. Well, we've had a couple. Well, one I guess probably one of my favorite experiences we had was our first group of guys that we had here when we went to Dallas, and we were able to take them to Cowboy Stadium, and we went to AT&T Stadium, and those guys got to practice there before we played a game one time on the road, and we were able to get in there and do a run through and a practice, which everybody watches, the Dallas Cowboys play and things like that, and just being able to give them that experience of seeing that facility, for guys that have never been in there and being able to see it. I thought that was always a good one. And then we've had some good moments of just, being in and out of airports and watching guys fly for the first time. I love it when we go to the airport the first time and you can look around while we're checking our bags and we're getting ready to go, and you can see those 3 or 4 guys that have never been on a plane before, and they're like, am I really going to do this? And the team knows too, right? The team knows too that they've never done it. And I think that's always something fun as a coach, just giving them that life experience and some things like that. And so that's part of it. I think that's some of the stuff that we've really enjoyed here and being it, and I think here at our place at OUAZ was just being able to play our first home football game here. That group of guys that made it from that first year where we redshirted them and practiced, and then we put them out on the field and watched them play for the first time. That was a really neat moment.
Love it. So what was your welcome to the coaching game moment? And like you had basketball players like, oh, this is what NBA is like. What was that for you as a coach?
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I mean, you got to remember now when I first got my first full-time coaching job, I was the youngest I was 25 when they hired me, and 3 days after it, I turned 26. So I was one of the youngest head coaches in the state of New Mexico. And I can still remember doing my game plan the day of the game, writing out my call sheet and making sure I had everything on my call sheet. I was at the Blinn High School pool in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just outside of, and we were taking at the beginning of the school year, we'd always take those kids swimming. And I can still remember being so nervous about writing my call sheet out. Like I still have that call sheet shaved. And it was like, I would have to start it over because a number might be just a little, the 2 wasn't drawn right. I'd throw it away and I'd bring it back and I'd hand draw it. And I could still remember just that moment of like, this is really happening tonight. I'm going to have to go coach this team. Now, this isn't practice and, hey, we're out there running routes and plays. Like, people are really going to come, right? And they're going to watch coach, right? They're going to see your piece of work. I think that was one I always laugh at today because, we've been doing it a long time now. And just that moment of like, okay, you really wanted to be this guy. You really wanted to be the head football coach, and tonight's the night. It's your home opener, and you're at your alma mater, right? I went back home and I coached at my high school I grew up playing for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, so it was like, okay, this is really happening. And I can always, I think about that young guy that was freaked out. And now, 50 some years later, I'm 52, going to be 53 soon. And I'm thinking, that was crazy that day. But that was one of my moments to start. And then I think my next one where it really kind of hit, just coaching and teaching is the first time I had a guy I played with in college and his son was in high school, and I was able to recruit a former teammate of mine. And that was where I was starting to be like, okay, this is pretty cool. I played with that guy. We grew up together. I was in the locker room with him in college, and now I'm sitting in his living room recruiting his son.
Right.
And those are some pretty good moments.
Love it. Favorite place you've been that football took you to?
Favorite place? Let's see. I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to get to go to Hawaii a couple times coaching football, either for games or recruiting and stuff like that, which is always neat. I was real fortunate. Let's see. I mean, as a player, you got to realize when I was a rookie in the NFL, the first time I ever went to training camp, I walked out there with Sam Mills was playing linebacker, Ronaldo Turnbull, Jim Mora was the head coach, Vic Fangio was the defensive linebacker coach at New Orleans, Willie Rofe was starting it there, and you walk out there to training camp, and I still. Some of those guys, walking out there with Warren Moon and Denny Green and some of those, you look around and you're like, those guys are Hall of Famers. Like I'm standing out here now. That might not be like an exotic place or anything like that, but and I say this every Saturday at pregame meal, and I've said it for 12, 15 years that you got to pause as a player. And you got to stop and you got to look around and like kind of soak it in, like the pregame meal, the smell of the grass, the locker room. And I always use that example of not like a little kid, like a little kid, you come downstairs and you open your Christmas presents and you tear through everything. And then you go look for the next one and then you end up playing with the box, right? You got to stop and be like, man, this is an awesome experience just to be in the locker room with these players and these coaches and look around and go, like hopefully when your time gets to that ending point, you can look around and go, man, what an experience that was to be around those group of guys. Man, I can, and I always use there's certain things like popcorn, right? You can smell the popcorn before a game, or the grass, or a song, right? Somebody like our guys, our first year, our original group, every time we'd get done with the game and we'd win, and we'd be coming back here to campus in Phoenix, and we'd be driving down the road. Our guys on the offensive bus would turn on one song and they would sing it as we were driving back to campus. And every time I hear that song, I think about certain guys. I think about certain plays. I think about certain moments that happened in those games that we won. And every time from now till I die, right, I'll hear that, or I'll see something and it'll bring back a memory of, oh, that was so-and-so. I remember when he caught that pass against this place, or, or a restaurant or something that maybe we went to before the game or something. And I think those are kind of those places, right, that football's taking you to, that we don't really know it's got us to that point, right? The team, the camaraderie of the group of guys, of why we really got into coaching in the first place, not the money or the experience. It's the level. It's, if you're really doing it for the right reason, it's those moments of, man, I remember when we were there, right? And I had that happen, and it was pretty cool. So yeah.
Love it. Getting back to the interview now, let's talk about today's age in college. Like, how are you navigating recruiting after COVID, now NIL deals, and just a whole change in college football? So how are you navigating the recruiting now?
Well, I think, for us, at the NAI level, small college football, our NLI stuff, it's hard on our guys because our kids probably everything. And I would even say, probably if you're a group of five guy, right? If you're at that, you're not in the Power Five type situation, all your kids see and all they hear, right, is the money, right? And and we all know, right, that it's not always all true. It's not always the gospel, right? So it's a lot of, fake out there, a lot of wool ticket being sold of what it is and what it really isn't. And you got to sit your guys down and go, look, you might think it's better to leave and try to go, but in all reality, is it where you're wanted, right? You might want to go to some places, right? We all might want to be at that school, or school A or school B. But here, this coming weekend, I'll sit down with the kids and the players and the parents, and I'll say, pick a place that you're wanted to be at. And I think that's the tough part navigating college football now, is there's a lot of guys that I want to go from school A to B, and I want to go, and that's all good. But when you walk in that building and you walk in that complex every day, are those coaches excited that you walked into the building? You want to play someplace, and I'm not talking monetary, right? I'm not talking money. I'm not talking scholarship dollars. I'm not talking NLI or any of that. And I might be behind the curve a little bit on this one, but if you walk in the building and people aren't excited that you're on the team, and you're not excited there, and you're not excited to be with that group of coaches and players, and you might be looking over your shoulder going, I really think I should be over there. I should be playing at school B. I should be playing at school C. I don't know why I'm here. I'm not. Are you really going to coach and play good if you do that? Because then ultimately you made the decision all about money. You made the decision all about the almighty, and we all want to get our payment, right? We all want to get, but are you really going to put a good product on the field? Are you really going to do a good job playing? Are you going to do a good job coaching? I tell, and my wife laughs all the time about this statement, because there was a stretch there when I first started coaching. She thought my goal was to take jobs for less money, not more money. I was right. And I would look at stuff like that and say, okay, you got to go do, and I worry about where we're at sometimes in college football now, because it's either status driven, it's this, right? It's, and I know you got to pick a place, right? One that you're going to fit in the offense and the defensive system, and you want to get used, and you want to get your stats and all that stuff. But I also wonder sometimes, right? Am I am I picking school A because I just want to go play there for a semester, and then I'm going to try to jump to school B? Well, how good do those guys really play at school A? Because they're not totally invested in where they're at, and it's, when we were at Blinn Junior College in 2005 and 2006, we had some really good teams there. We won the national championship our second year there. And I always laugh about it because those guys loved playing there. They loved playing there, but they knew their job there was to get recruited to go to the next place. But they never talked about going to the next place. There was never a guy on those teams there that were like, well, I got to get recruited. I got to get my stats. They bought into the theory of, if we can go undefeated and win all of our games and look like a really good team, everybody's going to come and recruit us.
Right.
And that group of guys within a 4-year span there, they won 2 national championships at Blinn College within a 4-year span. I mean, we ended up getting a guy by the name of Cam Newton to come to Brenham, Texas to come play quarterback.
Right.
Well, come on. I mean, he was picking that place. Why? Because it was a good place to play football. It was well respected. It wasn't anything else besides of it, because he knew that there was quality people there that could help him end up getting the ultimate right of where he wanted to end up. And I just worry that maybe we're missing that fact of, if you really do right and work where you're at and mow your own lawn and paint your porch and make it look good, people will notice that you've done a good job. And I worry about that a little bit. But I mean, I might be the old school guy in the block of, when you're talking the amount of money supposedly that's being floated out there for kids, but I honestly do believe too, right? I do believe that players should be able to move. I mean, coaches move all the time. I mean, look at what happened yesterday here at the University of Arizona and those guys taking the Washington job. There's a group of kids that are local recruits that are on their campus and started classes yesterday. And they've been there for a week, and their coaches that recruited them the last 2 years left.
Right.
I don't say that the players shouldn't be able to transfer either. I mean, if us coaches can move around, I think the players should be able to. But I think there's got to be a lot like the NFL, right, where you have free agency, you have when the coaches can leave, you have when the players are open for movement. So there's more of a uniformity to it. But I think the players is, as we all know, right, there's so much money in college football, right? But even just outside of college football, I think all the college athletes should be able to be compensated in some form or fashion if they're going to school and doing a good job academically and socially. And I don't care if they're a starter or they're the third string pitcher in softball. They should be able to be taken care of. I mean, there's a lot of revenue and ways that it can be done. And there's a lot of smart people out there that can fix it if they truly want to.
Right. And that's actually why I'm not sure if I told you this, but I have a financial services company called Off the Field Financial Services. That's where all these plaques are from. I build organizations, and I'm able to do this on my free time while I'm coaching as well, because everything's remote. But I really just try to give back and teach back to I have a passion for the sports. So I go to colleges and I try to tell the athletes and teach the athletes about financial literacy, because even if you make it to the NFL, if you make that 1%, they still go broke. So what are they doing with their money? And now NIL deals, people are going to have the same problem with NBA or NFL. Like, they'll get like Angel Reese. She just got $1.7 million contract, and they're young. So like, who's telling them what to do with this money? And what I do is just try to navigate and try to give them a solution instead of just putting it into FanDuel and just betting all their money away.
No, it's true. I grew up in the era, and my wife always laughs that when I was at the University of New Mexico, you could walk across campus at any given time at the University of New Mexico, and by the end of the day, you could have 7 different credit cards. Right?
Wow.
And like 22, 23-year-old Coach Mike Nesbitt did not need an American Express card. Did not even understand, right? It didn't need a MasterCard, didn't need a Visa. I didn't who gives a guy, right? And my parents didn't know I was living out of the house. I was on campus. I was on scholarship. I could fill out the form, turn in, they give you a t-shirt. And then in 2 weeks you had a credit card, right? You had a $1,500 credit card. Well, I wasn't the only guy, right? That's where a service like yours, right? You need to come in and you need to talk to your athletes about, okay, how do you set up a checking account? When you get your student financial aid check, what do you do with your financial aid check? Right. Well, you're living on campus. You've got this, you've got that, right? What do you do with that check, right? Do you go to the mall right away? Do you go put stuff on your card? Do you go buy clothes? Do you go get yourself another pair of Jordans and all that? And then all of a sudden, right, you're or like you're saying, right, which is the worst part now is you have gambling where any guy can get on their phone and gamble on every football game, basketball game, baseball, whatever they want at any point in time, right? Well, then you got to talk to them about, okay, how you establish credit? How do you buy a house? Right? And I think that is the next part of, it's not about playing. I mean, if you play in the NFL and you get past 3 years, that's really good, but your life expectancy is 80 some years old. Right. You're done playing before you're 30. What are you going to do for the next 50 years? Right. That money is going to go fast, right? And so I think that's the other part of coaching and teaching and developing guys, that what you're doing is you got to figure out a way to sit down with them and say, okay, this is how you budget. This is how these are the bills you're going to have. This is, if you're going to move off campus, right? What's your rent? What's your utility bill come out to be? And then looking, okay, in 6 years, you're going to graduate. And then a lot of our guys at our level, a lot of small college guys, they have to take out student loans to be able to go to school and play because their scholarship doesn't cover everything. Okay, so what student loan's a good student loan? What student loan's a bad student loan? Right. And if you're not educating those guys, one, as we recruit them, right? Okay. Like I tell a lot of our guys, okay, if you're going to take out student loans, we need to find yourself a major that when you get out, you can go work for a company that's going to pay off your student loans within the first 4 or 5 years, right? Like, or if you're going to coach and teach, right? Where are you going to go coach? If you're going to work in business, right? You got to get yourself set up with a company afterwards. Right. Yeah. You might have to move someplace, right? You might have to move some outpost city, out in Iowa, North Dakota, South Colorado, wherever it is, right? And work for a company. But within 5 years, you're going to have a full-time salary, you're going to have benefits, and you have no student debt because as long as you're working for those companies, they're paying off your student debt, right? Which we all know, right? That's a killer for kids these days. They come out and they're already in debt, and then they're only making X amount, right? And they have families and all that. Well, I think you got to look at that, and I think that's important for what our student athletes see on a daily basis. Of, okay, yeah, you're making this, but how are you really setting yourself up down the road? And none of us want to do that. I mean, think about it. Right? I mean, we're not worried about that. We're like, do I have enough to go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch the playoffs tonight? Right? Do I have enough to go to the mall tomorrow? Can I take my girlfriend on a date? Right? Well, yeah, you have more than enough for that. But when you're doing it 3 nights a week, and are you saving any money? Are you putting any of that away? And then what are you looking at your degree field? Is your degree field even a degree that's a job that you can actually make, you can make money wait in 5 years, right? I mean, like guys will sit down with me in their exit interviews and go, I want to be a business major. Okay, so what's a business major? Well, I want to open my own gym. Okay, well, opening your own gym's expensive. How are you going to start that gym, right? Who are you going to get involved with to build a facility and certain things like that? And I think that's our job as coaches, right? To throw that and not squash the dream, but go, okay, how are you going to start that company? How are you going to do that? Who are you going to network with in the next 6 years while you're playing here and going to school here that can help you get that going? I think that's important too.
Right. Love it. We got one more segment for you, Coach. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Yes, sir. So this is called the hot seat question. We're gonna put you in the hot. What is one of the most spontaneous things you've ever done?
Most spontaneous things I've ever done.
Yes,
Oh
sir.
my gosh. Okay, so I've had a couple. All right, so we went one time, and this is a pretty good one. So we went. One of our wide receivers, he had a destination wedding at the time. Yeah, it was really good. And so my son, myself, and my wife, and we went with all of his teammates, and we ended up going to Jamaica. And there was a former wide receiver, and I'm not going to name drop him, but he was big time wide receiver. And we decided that we were going to go to this place where you could cliff dive.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we decided that we were going to cliff dive, and we jumped off this cliff together. My son, myself, and wide receiver A. We'll just leave him anonymous. And we jumped off, and we hit that water. And for us that has never cliff dived or anything like that, right? Well, the problem is you dive, but you got to hit it right where the tide is, right where it's high. And then the water goes back out. Well, we hit that water, and all three of us, the tide takes you back out to the ocean. And so you're actually going away from where you need to end up. And after I did it, all three of us, we were scared to death. And we were like, we will never do that again, ever. And so when I see wide receiver A on TV, and he's talking and he's all tough and all that, my son and I will text back and forth, and we'll be like, we weren't that tough that day when we jumped in that ocean.
I understand that. That might take the cake, Coach.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good, and it was still to this day that when and every now and then I run into him during different things associated with football and stuff, and we'll always joke about that. But that was one that I will never jump off a cliff ever into the ocean again. I can tell you
that. Maybe we'll try. I'm a little nervous myself.
You just got to know that you're going opposite direction once you hit that tide, because that water's pulling you back away.
I really appreciate you for coming on, Coach. Anything you want to say to your fans or supporters out there?
No. You know, you guys that watch your show and all that, just remember, you young coaches that are involved in this, that you're doing a lot of good work, even though when you don't see that you might be doing good work, you're doing really good work. And then when you're 30 years down the road, you're going to be walking around that convention, and you're going to run into guys that you don't even know that you really impacted, and they're going to walk up to you and tell you how important you were to them at a point in time in their young lives and you forget. We all forget, right? Because we see this and that and the status and all that, but you are there to help young guys grow, and young kids that need positive role models. And so just always remember that, you young guys out there that are coaching and teaching, that you won't see the body of work maybe for 25, 30 years down the road, and then you're going to see it. And so just always remember what we're trying to do in all reality is help teach young guys to become good dads and good husbands and good fathers and good people in their communities, and they can make our world a better place, because we need those guys out there. I do. I know I'm 50 some, and I probably got about a good 10 or 15 years left in me, and I need some good young coaches that are teaching young guys that can take care of me down the road. So I hope we always remember that. That's because that's really what we got called to do, not score touchdowns or block or tackle, but hopefully we're using the vehicle to help grow guys spiritually and emotionally and mentally, that we can make them good people and good husbands and good people.